Hey everyone, welcome back to Coded Row. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a melee AI from scratch. So today I'll be working with this orc raider who has a left hand and a right hand, and I'll probably switch this out because this is just the mesh by itself. And this is using Ascend Combat Framework in Unreal Engine 5.4.2. And let's get started. So this asset is actually from K Kit. This is K Kit. So if you subscribe to the Patreon, you get all these characters on the top and quite a few more that I showcased in my last devlog. A texture A and this texture. I think they look really sick, both stylized, very fitting with the game that I'm working on. And let's get started with making the AI. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go over to the appropriate file, and I'm just going to right click and create a blueprint class, and it's going to be the child of the ACF melee AI. So the ACF melee enemy BP, and I'll just call this orc reader underscore AI. I'll double click to open this. And there's quite a few things that I need to do as soon as I open this orc reader AI. The first thing I'm going to be doing is just changing this mesh. So I'll hit this mesh on the left in the components tab and change this to my orc like so. And then I'm also going to just adjust this capsule component to fit the appropriate height in the radius. So this will determine its hitbox. So this is good to me. Right around here looks good to me. Okay, this looks good. So for the location, I did -55 on the z-axis. And that is exactly how big my capsule half height is. So maybe that's a coincidence, but that worked out for me. And yeah, this looks good to me. So now what I'm going to need to do is create an anim class. So let's go ahead and do that. So over here in my orc raider folder, I'm just going to right click and create a blueprint class, which is going to be a child of the ACF simple template ABP. So I'll click this and click select, and I'll just call this orc underscore raider underscore simple underscore ABP. And now I'll assign it this orc skeleton, which is called orc raider underscore skeleton. So I'll assign it, and I'll double click to open this. And now what I'm going to do is go over to the details, and I'll scroll down, and there's a moveset layer and an overlay layers that I'm going to be messing with. And for the IK layer, I'm just going to turn this off, mostly because my game is on a very flat surface anyways, so I don't really need it. And now I'm just going to create a very simple moveset, and it's just going to be called moveset. So this is going to be its default state. But I don't have a anim blueprint to assign this to. So you'll see all these ABPs, but I haven't made one yet for this character. So let's go ahead and do that. So back in my folder, I'm going to right click, create a blueprint class, and make it a child of the ACF simple moveset. So I'll click on this, hit select, and I'll call this orc raider underscore simple moveset underscore ABP. Now I'll double click and reassign it that orc skeleton, and now hit OK. And now I can actually assign all the animations and blend spaces and so on. And since this orc won't really be jumping unless it's part of the attack animation and not really having much else, there's not going to be any swimming for this guy. The only things I really need to adjust, it's going to be my blend space, because I just need an idle pose for it and a movement pose for it. So now I'll just click over here and I'll create a blend space for the movement, and I'll call this orc raider underscore movement underscore BS for blend space. And I'll select that orc skeleton again. And then I'll create another one, which is going to be a blend space 1D for the idle pose. So pretty much the same thing. I'll just call this orc underscore raider underscore idle underscore BS for blend space. And I'll select this folder and click save. And again, it's going to ask me to pick the skeleton, and I'll pick that orc raider. And now I'll hit apply here to make sure these two blend spaces take place. And I'll hit compile and save. But now what I need to do is go into each of these blend spaces and actually assign it that animation. So there's only going to be one type of movement, because this character will always be facing forward. So this is really just a one-dimensional movement space. So for this guy, so I'll just drag and drop this right in the center, and this is going to be his running animation. Basically, every time he's moving, it's mostly just going to be, he probably wants to attack me. So I'll just set this to 50-50 just so it's right in the center for these, even though it's set to none. And I'll hit save. And now when I go back to my simple moveset, I'm going to click on my idle one and give him an idle pose. And now I'll just drag this in the idle pose, set this to 50 just to make it centered. You don't have to do this, but I'll hit save. And now let's test out a few things on my orc character. So first I'm going to go to the AI, and I want to give it that anim class that we set for it. And it's the orc raider simple. So orc underscore raider simple ABP. And you'll see that it's not, even after compiling, it's not in its default pose. And that's because we haven't actually set the moveset. So I just need to make sure that moveset is set. So now I'll hit compile here. And okay, I guess this did not change. But when I block or when I drag this AI out and hit play, and I just click simulate, and you're going to see that it's in its natural idle pose. And this is a little weird because it has an ACF sword, but it doesn't have any sockets or the ACF sockets that I need to add. So I'll go ahead and exit out of this, and it'll give me all these errors, and that's just because socket related stuff. And what I need to do is actually go over to my orc raider inventory component and just delete a bunch of the items that it's carrying without any sockets. So in the ACF equipment inventory component, I've just deleted all the available equipment slots other than my item slot.melee weapon. And I also deleted the starting item, which was my health potion. And you'll see by default there's this ACF sword, but I don't want that. I actually want it to be one of these axes. I think for this guy, I'll probably give him this club. So what I'm going to do is actually create him a melee weapon. So now I'll just there's already a folder called weapons. And I just need to assign it the proper texture that comes with this pack. So I just replaced the material reference with my orc texture one. And now I'm going to turn this club into a weapon. So what I'm going to do is in my weapons tab, I'm just going to create a blueprint class, and it's going to be the ACF melee weapon, or a child of the ACF melee weapon. I'll hit select, and I'll call this orc club weapon. It might be complicated, but for searching it, it'll be easy. So now just double click to open the blueprint editor. And now I'm going to adjust a few things here. So first, because it's a static mesh, I can't even add it because what we need is a skeletal mesh. So I will just right click my orc club and convert to skeletal mesh. But in order to do this, you actually need to go to plugins and enable your skeletal mesh editing tools. So it is in beta, but when you hit this check, it's going to ask you to restart, and you're pretty much just going to be able to right click on any static mesh and create a convert to skeletal mesh. So I'll go ahead and convert this, and you'll see it's SKM Orc Club, and it also creates this skeleton for it. Then I'll hit Control Shift Save to save all and go back to my Orc Club weapon, and I'll add that Orc Club here. And I'll double click to go into it, and I want to add two sockets, a start and an end. And this will pretty much just determine our traces. So I'll leave the start at the very bottom and the end at the very top, just like this. And now that the traces are set, I'm going to scroll down and just modify the weapon type, moveset, overlay, and actions, and the on body socket name and the in hand socket name. So I'll leave the handle type as one hand. And for the moveset, I'm just going to put this as moveset, just the default one. I know your sample will come with a ton of these, but I don't really need these for this case. And for the weapon type, it's going to be whatever type you want to really name it, and it has to match whatever's on your AI. So when I go back to my orc, and open this up, you'll see that there are going to be sockets over here in the equipment and inventory component. So I have an item slot.melee weapon that's available for this orc raider AI. So I'll just assign it to this item slot.melee weapon. And for the weapon type, I can just leave this empty. And so all I really need is the moveset and an on body and enhanced socket name. So for the on body socket, I'm going to call this single hand weapon. And because I don't want to add an equip animation, I'm just going to leave this as single hand weapon as well. So I'll hit compile and save. And now I'll scroll down and you can edit some basic information about your weapon. So I'll just call this Orc Club. You can add whatever thumbnail you want, scale it however you want, inventory stacks, item weight, and so on, and select a world mesh. I'm not gonna have drops in this game, but let's say I wanted it to drop on the floor, then I would have to use a static mesh to determine what it looks like. So this is exactly how it would look if I were to drop it out into the world as the static mesh. So now for the item slot, I actually want to select it to whatever is on my AI. So when I go over to my orc raider, you're going to see that there's an item slot dot melee weapon. So when I go back here, I want to select it to that item slot, which is going to be my item slot dot melee weapon, because now my character knows which item this is going to belong to. And because it's an available inventory slot, he's going to equip it. So for example, if you have your AI switching weapons, if I were to add this multiple times, so for example, if your AI had multiple weapons, then it would keep equipping on the same slot, and it's better to just assign the weapon to a specific slot. And of course, you can override it by using the offhand slot. So for example, if you were to switch this to an offhand, then you could override main hand moveset, so telling it that there is going to be a dual wielding aspect to this, and so on. But for me, I will leave it as a one hand. And now this looks pretty good so far, but I want to handle my collision component. So I'll go ahead and click collisions component. And now I want to add a damage trace. So I'll go ahead and click this plus sign and I'll just call this something like DAE. And when I expand this, it's going to give me a bunch of modifications. So I can add attack sounds, attack particles, a Niagara trail, start and end socket, which is already defaulted to start and end. And that's exactly what we assigned here. And this is basically going to tell it when it attacks, where will the attack start from, as in if anything is in between the start and end, that is what will damage the character or whatever it's attacking. So I'll go ahead and just change this damage type to ACF cut type. In my type of game, it's very small, and I'll just do a base damage of 1. And I'll leave the radius as something like 20, a trail length of 2, and now I can look for some attack sounds, and I can go over some sound effects here and maybe add an attack particle. So I'll just add this one, which is going to leave a red trail behind, and the trail will actually start from your start and end sockets as well. So now it currently won't test out properly because we haven't actually set the actions where the attack animations and so on. But if I were to try this out right now, you can see that it's trying to attack me and I actually haven't even equipped its sword, but I am going to be able to hit it. And now it's just looking at me. Yeah, but this animation is not for that. So let's get that fixed up. So now when I go back to my AI, I'm going to just attach that weapon over to its equipment and inventory component. So I'll change this ACF sword to that ACF orc club weapon. And at least you'll be able to hear that club or that sound effect that we set. And you can also kind of see the trail, but it's not in the appropriate place. So let's go ahead and fix that up. So for my orc raider AI, I'm going to click on the mesh and select that skeletal mesh asset to open this up. And it looks like this skeleton by default is just holding the weapons in its hand. And now what I would want to do is go ahead and find my hand R and add a socket and call this that single hand sword socket that we created. And that is coming from our weapon. So let me just double check to see the socket name, and you'll see that it is indeed called single hand weapon. So I'll go ahead and change that in the AI. And I'll go ahead and change that in the skeleton like so. And now when I hit play, you're going to see that it has a giant weapon that we need to scale down. Because this is it's not supposed to be that big. And in order to do that, I can just right click this single hand weapon and add a preview, and it can be that orc club. And you're going to see that it is extremely big for no reason. So I'm just going to scale this down by a lot. And when I hit details, I'll see that even at 0.25, it's really big. So I'll go ahead and do something like, so I did 0.01, 0.01, 0.01, but I think I can do 0.02, 2 times bigger. And yeah, this looks good to me. And I'll just click on this single hand weapon socket that I created and put it at a 90-degree angle. And I can also move it and adjust it to however I like. Now, one thing you may have already noticed is that this character that comes with this asset specifically already has weapons in the hand. And after I create this weapon, I'll show you how to give actions to a character that already comes with weapons in the hand. So you don't need to make weapons separately. It will always just use the same animations. But first, let's attach the weapon to the hand and go over this part. So now you'll see that the weapon is appropriate. And because of the animations, it's not going to be able to hit me because it is flying away. So I'll go ahead and go back to my AI. And now what we want to do is start working on the animations, which is going to be a bit of a long part. So now you'll see that there is an ACF actions component, and it's already set to the base actions. And the reason why our skeleton or our character is kind of separating into multiple pieces is because the animations aren't for the skeleton. And when I hit this magnifying glass sign to find it, it's using these actions that are for a completely different skeleton, which is the default ACF skeleton. So it's trying to do this, but it's not working successfully. So what we need to do is assign animations into montages and basically tell it in the montage when it's going to attack our player. So let's go ahead and do that. So I will go ahead back into the folder, right click blueprint class and create an action set. And you can also I could just right click and under ACF tools, I could just right click and select action set, and I'll call this orc_as for action set. And I'll double click to open this. And now I'm going to be very selective on what I want to do first. And let's add quite a few things to go over. So I'm going to add a actions.hit, attack, an equip, a death animation, and those 4 should be good for now. So I'll go ahead and just make these, and I'll just assign them their specific tags. So this is going to be my hit animation. This one will be my attack animation, actions.attack. This one will be my death animation, actions.death. And this one will be my equip.melee. And now let's start with the hit. So I'm going to select the ACF advanced hit action, and now I need to select it a montage. So now I'll go back to my orc folder, and I'm going to right click and create a new folder and call this montages. And I can actually just move this into my animations like so. So what I'm going to do first actually is select all my animations, right click, and I'm going to do asset actions and edit selection in property matrix. And I'm going to hold control and click A to select all. And now on the right, I'm going to look for root motion and enable root motion. This is so that it'll enable root motion for all of them, as you can see in the check marks here. So I'll hit save. It'll save every single animation and enable root motion. And I can exit out of this. And now I'm just going to start creating my montages. So I'm going to right click, and the first one I'm going to create is the hit montage. So under animation, I will create an animation montage and using that orc skeleton, and I'll call this orc_hit. So now when the orc is hit, I'm going to have it play a hit montage. So I'm going to look for the hit animations. So there's multiple. There's going to be this kind of hit. I'm not sure why it's upside down. So something is flickering here, but we'll have to look and see why that's happening. And it could just be that preview asset. So let's go ahead and check that out. So now when I double click orc hit, I am just going to right click in the montage. Actually, so you'll see this default tab. I'm just going to drag that hit underscore B into my graph next to the default slot. And now when I hit play, you're going to see it go upside down again for some reason, and not sure why that's happening, but that won't affect our montage playing correctly. So all I need is this hit animation playing for the hit, and just like this, I can add this to my actions. So under actions.hit, I'm going to add that orc hit. And in order to actually play this properly, I need to go back to the AI, and under damage handler, there's going to be hit response actions, and there's going to be allowed from directions. There's going to be allowed damage type, so the ACF damage type every direction, and it's going to use this tag in order to determine what animation to play when you take damage. So in this case, it's going to be actions.hit. So I'll just give it a high priority and leave this exactly how it is because it's already taking from the actions.hit, and that's what I assigned it here. And now if I go ahead and try this out, when I hit my orc, it's going to play that hit animation. And it's going to look a little funky because the other animations are still not set. So it's actually going to not work right now just because I didn't set the AC. I didn't change ACF base action set to the orc one. So when I change it to the orc one, hit compile and play, and now it's not going to do anything because the only actions we've set is to hit. So when I go ahead and hit this guy, he's going to have that hit animation that we just assigned it. And it's pretty cool. So for example, if I made him, I guess, do something crazy when I hit him, for example, let's just add this stand up. He's just going to start playing this animation every time I hit him. So I'll go ahead and show that example. So if I were to hit this guy, he's just going to lay down instantly and stand up like this, which surprisingly kind of works because it looks like I knocked him down and he just stood up. That actually gave me a much better, wait, that actually looks good. It actually gave a much better result than I thought it would. Okay, back to this. So I'll just go ahead and get that hit animation back, drag it in, delete this to play the full hit animation and hit save. And now I need to assign my other actions. And before we actually get into the other actions, there's going to be under your hit action, you're going to be able to decide which hit direction plays what. And these front, back, right, left is actually what's going to be played in according to what your montage section name. So ideally, you would want, if you are using all four directions, you would want to right click, create a new montage and call this front. So when you hit them from the front, it will play this front, whatever's in the front section of your montage in this hit action component. So it'll play the animation that's in front of this front and so on. And another thing we can do is configure the actions and the warp. So the warp hit distance will pretty much just tell it how far to go back. So I'll just set this something to like 1000 for now. And if I were to compile and save, now when I hit this guy, he's going to fly back pretty far. And the default is 200, but let's just set it as 300 for now. And this way you can determine if there is more or less knockbacks for specific AI. So now I'll close this action and move on to the next one, which is going to be our attack. So for the attacks, I want to assign it another montage. So I'll right click under animation. I'll create an animation montage, selecting the orc skeleton, and I'll call this orc underscore attack underscore AS underscore AM for attack montage. And for the hit one, I'll add an underscore AM at the end too for attack montage, or animation montage. So I'll go ahead and open my orc attack AM, and I'll look for some specific attacks. For this guy, I'm actually going to be adding some dual wielding attacks. So I'll add some montage sections after I drag in some animations. So I'll drag in, so I'll drag it here. I'll drag another one here, another one here. And I think these three are pretty good. So when I hit play, so he'll hit, a double hit, and a sweep, and a double stab. So I'm just going to right click, add a new montage section, and call this attack 1. And then right click, add another montage section, and I'll call this attack 2. And basically, if he attacks right now, he's going to do all three in this sequence. And I don't want that. I want him to do different ones at random times. So in my montage sections tab, I'm going to click on this arrow and click remove link. And then the same thing from attack 1 to attack 2, remove link. So these are all treated as separate animations, just all in the same montage. And now there's a few things I need to do, which is adding some notifications. So I'll go ahead and right click and add another notify track and leave the name as 2. So in 1, I'm just going to add a notify, and I'll call this action ACF action substate. And this is pretty much going to determine when the hits are striking. So here's a hit and here's a hit. So I wanted to attack twice. If the player is actually hit by both, he will take double the damage. So one hit here, and I'll just copy this, and another hit right here. And I'll go ahead and add this. And now on the second track, I'm going to right click and add a ACF notify exit action to tell the character that he can start moving and he's not stuck in this animation anymore. And the only part that matters for this ACF notify exit is wherever this diamond is. So make sure it is after the attack. So he enters his action.hit here and action.hit here again in this animation. And then he can exit right after that. And now for attack 1, it's a double attack and a sweep. So I'll put this ACF notify exit at the end and I'll just have one long attack, which is going to be from here to here. And now for attack 2, he's just going to have a stab, and that's it. Propel back, and as soon as he starts moving forward, I want that action to turn on. And he stays there for a bit, so even if you still touch it, it will attack you. And then I'll add that notify right after. And just like that. And again, the diamond's at the very end, so that's perfectly fine. And now I'm just going to add this to my orc action set, and this was called the orc attack AM for animation montage. And for the actions here, I'm just going to set this tag to the ACF attack action BP. And now when I open this up, you're going to see which damages it's going to activate. And in this case, it's going to be left and right. You can select right weapon only, left weapon only, or just physical damage in general. But for this case, I'm going to select left and right. You can also select warp. So in this case, whenever you attack someone, the enemy or player with the warp setting on, so in this case, the orc, will move towards me. And for the actions cost, it is going to, by default, it's set to using 32 stamina. I'm just going to remove this because I'm not going to be using stamina in my game. And if you don't have stamina configured, the character's just not going to attack because it doesn't have any stamina to use. And it's looking for that specific action cost in order to meet the requirement to attack. And currently, the orc won't be attacking me because I haven't actually given it a way to equip. And currently, I am actually looking for a way in ACF to have your enemies start with the weapon in hand with the appropriate moveset layers. I know with unarmed, you can do this. So that's why I do recommend, if you want that to happen, have your characters just attach the weapons to your hand in Blender or something, and then import that skeleton over. But in this case, yeah, let's give it an equip animation. So now under my orc action set, I will close this. And for equip.melee, it's going to be the ACF use item action. And that's actually going to go into the equip.melee, ACF use item action. And for the death one, let's just assign it the death action BP. And let's create both of these montages now. So I'll right click, animation, animation montage, animation montage, select the orc raider skin or skeleton, and I'll call this orc underscore death underscore animation montage. And I'll just assign it a death animation. In this case, I won't do anything too complicated. He's just going to fall back. And I'll hit save. And now I'm going to go back and create another animation montage, and this is going to be for equipping the weapon itself. So I'll do the orc skeleton and call this orc underscore equip underscore AM. Double click to open it, and I'll search for my equip animation. And this character specifically did not come with an equip animation, so I'm just going to use the anim use item. So it kind of looks like it's eating something, but in this case, it's just going to be the equip. And I don't want it to take this long just to start attacking. So I'm going to play this at a rate scale of 3, just to have it be really quick. And the blend time will be 0 and blend out will be 0 as well. And for the notify, I'm just going to right click on the notify and do an ACF notify action. And this notify action is just going to call that ACF use item action. So now let's assign these attack montages. So I'll assign the equip melee, the ACF equip animation montage, and then the death one will be the orc death animation montage. Now I'll hit compile and save. And now when I go back to my game, so when you go over to your orc action set, just make sure that under the equip action that you have, so my actions dot equip dot melee, there is an item slot tab that you also have to adjust here, and I'll just select that melee weapon. And now this should be good to go. You can also try to equip offhand and so on. But I am going to adjust the stats of my orc because I know he's very OP for the game that I'm working on by default. So for my orc statistics, there's a bunch of default stuff already set up. I'm just going to delete all of these. And then under statistic, I'm just going to give it health, and I'm going to give it 3 health. And let's see how much damage his weapon does. I think I set it to 1 in the weapon. Let me double check. So to set the damage, I can go to the collision comp, and then there is a base damage number here. So it is set to 1 to do 1 damage. So let's check it out. So if he hits me, yep, it'll only do 1 damage. And my character has, I believe, 5 HP at the moment. Yeah, so if he hits me one more time, I'm dead. So you'll see the trace that we set. And currently, because there is technically no weapon on the second hand, he is not hitting his second damage, but I hear the trace going off, which is fine. But basically, if I was to touch his fist, he would, hey, you're supposed to stay dead. Let's fix that up. So in the orc action set for the death montage, so, okay, this makes sense. So he just stands up right after playing this. So I'm just gonna include that pose at the end. And I'll right click, add a new montage section and call this death loop and add this at the very end. And now I'm going to break this. And now it's going to tell me to pick the next section, and I can just set it to death loop to just loop on this. And basically what it's going to do is just play this animation and then be stuck in this pose. until the actor's destroyed. But I haven't set the actor to be destroyed just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill this guy. And now he's just playing that loop. So it just looks like he's just dead. Like and subscribe. All right. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below what you want to see next. And I'll see you in the next video. In the next ACF video, I'm actually going to be going over how to create unarmed animations, because a lot of people are getting characters in that already come with weapons, such as this one. So I'll go over that in the next video, because this video is going to be a pretty long one, or this video was a pretty long one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.